Hi, I'm Katie, and I work as a nurse. My husband's name is Jack. Right now, he's staying home and taking care of the house full time. Not long ago, Jack was working at a company, but he decided to quit because he didn't get along with his new boss who was transferred to his department. When Jack told me he quit, I was upset that he made such a big decision without discussing it with me first. But I tried to see the positive side of things, thinking maybe it was better for him to leave the job before it made him unhappy. Even though Jack isn't bringing in any money anymore, I have a job as a nurse, and the house we live in was inherited from my late mother, so we don't have to worry about paying rent. This means we can still live comfortably. At first, I was worried and stressed about Jack not working, but he was doing a great job taking care of the house. So I started to get used to it and even enjoy having him at home. Then one day, when I came back from work, I found my sister-in-law Brittany visiting. Jack hadn't told me she was coming over, which annoyed me a bit, but I noticed that Jack seemed happier than usual. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but I asked Jack to let me know in advance next time. He agreed and asked Brittany to leave, but she wanted to stay the night. Jack looked worried and politely asked her to go home for the night, saying it was too sudden for her to stay over. When Jack told Brittany she needed to leave, she gave me a hostile look and stormed out angrily. I wondered why Brittany had come over, especially considering the distance she had to travel. It turned out Brittany had recently gone through a divorce and had nowhere else to stay. She had briefly moved in with my parents, but their place was small, and they were pressuring her to find a job and contribute financially, which made her feel unwelcome. I felt sorry for her situation. Initially, I was frustrated with my husband for letting Brittany stay without consulting me. But then Jack explained that he'd been feeling down because he couldn't find a job, and he just wanted someone to listen to him for a change. Despite my annoyance, I understood his need for support. Although I was annoyed with Jack's actions, I realized he needed someone to talk to. So I reluctantly agreed that it was better for Brittany to stay than for her to be alone in her situation. However, I made it clear to Jack that he needed to inform me before inviting guests over in the future. I briefly wondered if I was spoiling Jack too much by letting him get away with things like this, but I decided not to dwell on it. I made sure to confirm with Jack that he understood the need for communication next time and didn't bring it up again that day. 2 days later, while I was at work, Jack texted me, asking if it was okay for Brittany to come over again. He mentioned that I would be working until 9 p.m. and assured me that he would make sure she left before then. Even though Brittany had just been over recently, Jack seemed eager for her to visit again. Feeling a bit uneasy about Brittany's frequent visits, I agreed reluctantly, telling Jack to ensure she left as soon as possible. I wasn't thrilled about Brittany coming over again, but seeing Jack so happy about it made me decide to let him enjoy his time with his sister. During my busy day at work, I completely forgot about Brittany's visit. However, when I got home, I was surprised to find her still there. I asked why she was still around, and Jack quickly realized I was upset. He apologized, admitting that he had been seeking advice from Brittany without keeping track of the time. Jack promptly told Brittany it was time for her to leave. She seemed annoyed but eventually packed her things and left after a bit of hesitation. I expressed my frustration with Brittany's behavior, questioning why she couldn't sense when it was time to go home. Jack defended her, saying she had come all the way to our house just to lend him an ear. Despite feeling that they could have met up somewhere else, I was too exhausted to argue further and apologized for saying too much. Feeling drained, I decided to excuse myself and rest, although I sensed Jack might have wanted to discuss something more with me. The next day, I had a day off, so I was relaxing at home when Jack brought up what had happened the day before and apologized. He admitted that he was wrong to expect me to get along with Brittany right away, especially considering how busy I had been. Realizing that I hadn't been making enough time for Jack lately, and understanding his desire for me to bond with his sister, I acknowledged his apology and expressed regret for saying too much the previous day. Jack seemed relieved that we were able to talk things through. He even promised to make my favorite dish, meatball pasta, for dinner. As he started cooking, his phone rang. I asked who was calling, and he mentioned it was Brittany. Despite feeling uneasy about it, I suggested he answer in case it was urgent. Jack picked up the phone, but I couldn't hear their conversation, and the call ended quickly. "How's Brittany?" I asked Jack, and he replied, "She said she has something to tell me, so she's coming over here now." I couldn't understand why Brittany had to come over on my day off, and it irritated me. But since she was already on her way, I didn't say anything about it. "Okay, I'll go make Brittany's pasta too," Jack said happily and began cooking. He didn't realize I was upset, and I couldn't understand why he didn't refuse her from coming over. However, I saw it as an opportunity to speak with her directly. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Since our house was far from where Brittany was staying, I wasn't expecting her, but it was indeed Brittany at the door, with a large suitcase in tow. I had a very bad feeling about this, but I let her into the house. While Jack was still busy preparing lunch, I decided to ask Brittany directly what had happened. She appeared upset and tearful as she explained that she had been kicked out by her parents because she wasn't working, and they felt she was freeloading off them. As I listened to Brittany's story, my fears started to materialize. Jack reacted strongly, expressing his anger at Brittany's parents and calling them horrible for not supporting their own daughter. His outburst irritated me, but I chose to stay quiet and let Brittany continue. She explained that she had nowhere else to go and asked if she could stay with us. Feeling uncomfortable with the idea of Brittany living with us, I attempted to refuse, but Jack quickly interjected, saying there was no other option and that we had a spare room she could use. I shot Jack a glare, but he seemed oblivious to my discomfort. He justified his decision by saying that Brittany needed help. Unable to hold back any longer, I expressed my frustration, reminding Jack that he wasn't currently working either, and adding that I couldn't support two unemployed people on my salary alone. At that moment, something struck me on the head, and I was momentarily disoriented. Brittany, laughing hysterically, pointed out that Jack had thrown an egg at me. When I touched my hair, I felt the eggshells, realizing what had happened. Brittany blamed me for the incident, insisting that I should be nicer to her. Then Jack threatened me, saying that if I continued to have a bad attitude towards Brittany, he would divorce me. He reminded me that if we divorced, I would have to leave the house. Jack seemed pleased with himself, and Brittany looked satisfied as well. Since I remained silent, they assumed I had been convinced by their ultimatum. They asked if I was ready to apologize and suggested I take a shower before we discussed living together as three. While Jack happily finished preparing lunch, Brittany relaxed on the couch, watching TV and snickering at me. Despite wanting to speak my mind, I decided to take action instead. I grabbed Brittany's luggage and threw it off the balcony. Both Jack and Brittany were shocked by my sudden action, demanding to know what I was doing and accusing me of being out of my mind. Jack panicked and told me to retrieve the thrown items, but I refused, asserting that it was my house, and I wouldn't tolerate their behavior any longer. Jack retorted, asserting that as husband and wife, the house belonged to both of us, and he had every right to allow his sister to stay there. I scoffed at his claim, finding it amusing, which only seemed to agitate him further. He insisted that he was the true owner of the house because it had been inherited from his mother, implying that I had no rights to it. Both Jack and Brittany appeared surprised by this revelation, but they quickly dismissed it, arguing that even if Jack owned the house, we were still married, so it didn't matter. Ignoring their mumbling, I reiterated that the house was mine regardless of ownership and questioned why they were so insistent on Brittany staying with us. I suggested that if they wanted to live together so badly, they should find their own place to rent. Furthermore, I pointed out that it was unreasonable for me to support two people who weren't working. While I had initially understood Jack's decision to quit his job, I now noticed that he wasn't even contributing to household chores anymore. Feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, I decided to be honest with Jack about my feelings. When I told him that I would rather live alone, he reacted defensively, expressing disappointment and criticizing my inability to take care of our family. He even went as far as to present me with divorce papers. As Jack handed me the divorce papers, I couldn't help but notice Brittany's smug expression, realizing she had likely influenced this decision. It became clear that she had orchestrated the situation to her advantage. Without much choice, I was left alone to contemplate my next move. Jack and Brittany left, giving me time to think, with Jack implying that I should apologize if I wanted to salvage our relationship. Feeling pressured and unsure of what else to do, I hastily showered, filled out my part of the divorce papers, and submitted them, resigning myself to the reality of our situation. It seems like my husband showed me the divorce papers to scare and threaten me, even though it was Brittany's idea. He went along with it, and I realized I didn't want a husband who would do such a thing to his own wife. A few days later, Jack called, asking if I was ready to apologize. I was furious with him for talking down to me, so I responded by asking why he wasn't the one calling me sooner. He seemed confused, so I explained that I had submitted the divorce papers and it was finalized. I also mentioned that I sold a house and quit my job, starting fresh somewhere else. I informed him that I sent his belongings to his parents' place, though I was worried they might not all fit in their small house. Jack seemed unaware of what was happening and sounded like he was arguing with someone else on the phone. I decided I had nothing more to say to him and blocked his number. A few months later, I visited my old neighborhood and saw Jack working at a supermarket. He seemed to be having trouble at work, being scolded by a younger woman while other workers chuckled. I felt a bit sorry for him, but there was nothing I could do. He was just a stranger to me now. Perhaps if Jack had handled his relationship with his sister differently, this situation might have been avoided. But regardless, I'm glad I divorced him because I'm enjoying my life as a single person now.